This is part 2 of my series on nephron physiology. In this one, I'm going to be talking about the proximal tubule and its function. So let's go ahead and start with the proximal convoluted tubule. The proximal convoluted tubule, the most important thing to remember is that the proximal convoluted tubule is responsible for sodium bicarbonate reabsorption. It's also responsible for glucose reabsorption. But the reason I want you to remember that it's responsible for sodium bicarbonate reabsorption is because that will help you to remember all of the moving parts here. Remember, first of all, that sodium is the driver. Everything happens because of a sodium movement of sodium. Okay, so what ends up happening is first we have our sodium-potassium pump, which is going to pump sodium out of that cell and potassium into the cell, creating a concentration gradient for sodium. Sodium is low inside the cell, it's high in the filtrate, okay? So sodium is high here, low out here, well, low in the cell here. So sodium will move freely into the cell. The movement of sodium is going to be coupled with hydrogen, okay? Sodium will move in, hydrogen will move out. That's an antiport. So now we have more hydrogen here in the filtrate, okay? Hydrogen in the filtrate is going to bind with bicarbonate, and that is going to create carbonic acid. Now, carbonic acid is going to, there's actually an enzyme here called carbonic anhydrase that's on the surface of these cells that's going to turn carbonic acid into water and carbon dioxide. Water and carbon dioxide can then diffuse across the membrane of this cell and into the cell, where they will again act with another carbonic anhydrase, turning back into bicarbonate and acid, okay, and hydrogen ions. And that is going to drive the rest of what happens. Bicarbonate and sodium are then moved out. Bicarbonate is also going to be antipore movement with chloride, so chloride is going to move into the cell. And that's pretty much everything that happens right there in that section. Don't forget, sodium's the driver, glucose, okay? So glucose is going to move into the cell with sodium along that sodium gradient. It will then be moved out of the cell passively, okay? And now let's talk about the proximal straight tubule. This part is primarily responsible for sodium chloride reabsorption. So in this section, what's going to happen, again, sodium's our big driver. We have our sodium-potassium pump that's going to pump sodium out, potassium in, and then sodium movement can be coupled with different things to get chloride out of the cell. First, sodium is coupled with hydrogen ions. Okay, hydrogen ions will be pumped out, sodium will be pumped in, and that actually creates an electrical force that will allow for these anions to want to kind of move over to balance out that charge, right? So these ions move out to balance the charge, allowing chloride then to go into the cell, and chloride can then be pumped out of the cell with potassium, actually. Also important to note in the proximal straight tubule is when our organic acids will be secreted into the tubule here. That's an example of that is para-amino hippuric acid, which will kind of diffuse across there. I hope this video was helpful to you. I'm going to move on to the next section in a different video.